We are turning into a very toxic culture. And if this isn't taken seriously, watch what's going to happen, because it's not going to be good.
Today I have the absolute pleasure of welcoming Rebecca P. Fox. How have you found the balance to stay disconnected?
Society's very confused right now, but the problem with it is people use it for validation. Let me ask you, Aaron, who is Aaron?
I am...
Parents were like documenting their children's lives like there's no tomorrow. Now we're hitting a generation where kids have grown up believing that is how you get validation, that is how you get acceptance. If you took away all the likes and all the comments of social media posts, how many people do you think would post? No one wants to be individual. Inspiration's great, but you're never going to be that person, ever.
There's so much information. Kids are learning things a lot quicker.
They're teaching them by memorizing words. They have no idea how to sound the word to learn it. That's very frightening. Kids don't play nowadays. How do kids play nowadays? Online, online, online. They're winning. They're killing people with some of these games. That's removing empathy. You get validation by being the best.
The divide is so much bigger, and I'm so much better than you as a 14, 15-year-old because I have 50,000 followers, and some of them do. And that's the scary thing.
We have become a society of definition of labels.
It's almost overwhelming, and then I think people sit on their own sometimes and they go, I'm not really all of those. And then it's keeping up appearances.
The problem you have, the more power you give someone, the more probability they are going to be highly narcissistic.
Narcissists employ other narcissists to control essentially what they call the minions.
The truth is, when you go up against those kind of narcissistic corporations, they will fight you to the death, and they will...
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I have the absolute pleasure of welcoming Rebecca P. Fox, a very strong name, healing trauma, psychotherapist, great content, very big profiles. We were just talking about merging the business side into the content creation. But for those who are watching who may not know who you are, give us a 30-second overview of who you are and what you do.
So, yeah, Rebecca's my name. I'm a psychotherapist. I specialise in healing from trauma. I also specialise in personality disorders. So I guess the hot word right now is narcissist, right? But they are personality disorders when we talk about the clinical level. But we all have narcissistic traits and tendencies, which people don't want to accept. So it's a hot topic, and it's something that I educate on.
Yeah, well, it's going to be an awesome podcast. So just to give some context to the viewers, we're going to cover off the very crazy world that we're in right now, from the pressures of social media for men and women, especially the younger generation, some of the battles that I suppose people are having, a lot of comparison, how that can affect relationships. I think what people are exposed to, again, mainly online. So stick around, because it's going to be a very relevant, and hopefully you're going to take a lot from it. So to kick this off, we were just talking about content creation. You were saying that obviously you've had some great clients. You've really merged your business online. Let's start with all the positives that you have found from now merging essentially your life really and what you do online. Where's the pros first and foremost?
It's definitely the reach, like being able to reach multiple people. And for me in particular, not everyone can afford therapy. So being able to give value at a lower level and help people, and people just don't feel alone when they listen to my content. So those are definitely the pros. You know, depending on what content you consume is how beneficial it's going to be for you. So being able to get that out there and support people at a low level, for me, is amazing. Yeah.
Have you found that there's been a high engagement of people? Because I suppose sitting behind the camera, listening to someone like yourself who might be able to give answers to something that perhaps someone isn't, I wouldn't say brave enough, but maybe don't want to expose maybe that weakness or an issue they have. Do you find that there's a high engagement around the content that you're talking about, you know, healing trauma, just sort of, I suppose, more the mental health sort of sector of all of this, that a lot of people are engaging, but watching and listening and then engaging? Do you find that?
Yeah, absolutely. And the good thing is, you know, mental health's more recognised now. So it's something that's more spoke about, it's more accepted. You know, years ago, certainly when we were younger, it was like, if you have mental health issues, you're a nutter, you're an idiot. That's not the case. You know, we all suffer with it. None of us are immune. So it's more accepted and talked about. However, we're coming into a very toxic culture now. You know, social media is great, but it breeds a lot of toxicity, which is what we're seeing. So people are now struggling with that. They're struggling even more so. So they don't understand necessarily what's going on or how they're feeling or how certain behaviours from other people or their behaviour online is impacting them. So that's where social media kind of has its negative crux, so to speak. But it does have its positives there for sure.
So how have you found sort of transitioning from offline, essentially, off of social media, to moving online? Like, how have you found the balance to stay disconnected? Because I find that when you move your business, essentially your personal life, you start becoming more of an online person. You go through a testing phase. I certainly found it because I came off Instagram for 7 months because it ended up consuming me.
Yeah.
How did you find that transition? Have you gone through any sort of hurdles where maybe you've become too involved? Like, are you disconnected? Like, how are you finding your life balance with social media, having a big account?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question because you are right. It can consume you. And I think at the start, when you're someone that takes what you do very seriously and you genuinely care about what you do, any sort of negative comments or any personal attacks on you, you take it personally. But the truth of the matter is you're triggering people based off their insecurities and their trauma that they haven't dealt with. So you're right, like how I deal with that. I had to get an assistant to deal with all of my social media. Like that for me was gold. That was the biggest turning point for me. But again, regular breaks. You know, I rarely browse on social media, rarely, because it consumes you. It does. You do compare. It's natural human instinct to compare to other people. So I try not to get submersed into that. I'm very particular on how much time I allow myself on social media.
Yeah, I'd second what you just said about building out a team, because when you build out a team, you're making it more official. So anyone watching, that's a great tip. If you're going to go on social media and you're going to make it your life, your bread and butter, building out a team gives you a legitimate reason to not get too emotionally involved, which in return, I suppose, avoids this whole comparison and false validation. That's something that, you know, it's incredible. You know, we've got the lovely Faye, we've got Paul, the sponsor, we've got Mac, my editor, and you kind of, everyone has their roles. So you're not, and I'm just like you as well. People say, oh, did you see that post? No. I actually rarely like anyone else's stuff because I'm just using it for the pro, which is business and awareness. So talk me through, what are some of the real downfalls that you're seeing that's quite common at the moment, that people are reaching out or they're leaving comments, sort of mental health wise? What are people struggling with that you're seeing with socials now?
It is mainly anxiety and depression. So anxiety and depression are symptoms of an underlying problem. You know, it's not just something that pops up. It's a symptom of something else. So people are struggling, you know, they don't understand it. I'm like, okay, are you sleeping? Well, I don't know. Do you have depression? I don't know. But do you feel sad? I don't know. They're so confused with everything. And again, this is where social media has a huge negative. You get a lot of people that don't know what they're talking about, promoting stuff online, and it's confusing people. It's just adding more confusion. And society's very confused right now. There's a lot of confusion. Adding more to that is not healthy. So again, we're adding to that toxicity. So what most people come to me because they've been in traumatic relationships. That's pretty much who I work with. But these relationships can be with family members, work colleagues, yes, intimate relationships, which is what everyone thinks about. But it spreads much further. If you've got someone that has that narcissistic personality style, they're not just narcissistic to their partner, they're that way to everyone they meet. So it's a huge knock-on impact effect.
Family members, this is an interesting one. So I have a lot of questions to me saying, Aaron, I want to start a business, or I want to change my circumstances. I need to get myself in a better financial situation, but I don't have supportive family members. And I find this one an interesting one because for me, I think there's only one answer. You offer the olive branch and you say, you don't need to understand what I'm trying to do, but I am trying to better myself. I just need you to support me and just cheer me on and just hope I do well. And I know that many family members that will turn around and say, well, that's not what we wanted for you. How would you say you have to deal with that? Because I have my way. It's very clean. It's a cut-off. You join me or I have to do my own thing. How do you find, this whole sort of battle against family members? How do people deal with that?
I mean, ultimately, the end result, again, I don't like to tell people, I get what you're saying, because realistically going no contact and saying, no, I'm done, I'm doing my own thing. Of course, that's going to get you one result. But let's look at it from the other point of view. Let's say you take on the family member and say, all right, I'm going to hold off on my dreams. I'm going to continue in this 9-to-5 job that I hate and I'm bored and I'm not happy, but I'm going to do this for you. That's going to create so much resentment towards the other. You're still not going to have a healthy relationship. So again, do we communicate as a society? No. You know, people hear what they want to hear. There's a lot of perception out there, but no one actually wants to listen to what people say to get an understanding, to then get a resolve, right? It's natural for us to grow as humans. Like, and again, those that don't want to grow, there's something within them that's preventing them from doing that. So your example, if your partner wants to, you know, make it big in the world of business, that can be very daunting for someone that has low self-esteem. How are they going to cope with that? So the way they cope initially is by control. Look, I don't want you doing this. I need you to stay at home. I need you to stay in your job, because they're too insecure themselves to deal with that. So have the conversation. Like, this is where I'd go first. Actually have a conversation. Like, what is the problem with this? This is what the future could look like. And if you have someone that is dead against it and they're not prepared to have a conversation and compromise, okay, now you've got to make decisions for yourself, right?
Yeah. I think people are scared of change as well. Like, I'm
sure.
a sucker for it, even when I go to a restaurant. You know, I think, should we go somewhere new? Well, I like what I like. You know, I rarely branch away from a Dansack, you know, quite literally. We were talking about that on the way up. But people don't like change. And I think that's what, it's like the unknown. I would definitely say communication is something that Paul and I talk about, communication on a business level, in terms of when communication breaks down, it's basically not going to happen. A deal won't go through because no one's talking. There's no figuring it out. And I find that is the same in relationships. It's the same in just society at the moment, because I think it's crazy. Let's face it, we've all been there. You lay in bed with your partner or whatever, and we're all on our phones. And I think that's why either something needs to happen where you have a bit of a wake up call, because this disconnection, if you're going to be on social media, and let's face it, I don't know who's not on social media now. You need to be the creator opposed to the consumer. What are your tips for, people going onto a detox, having disconnection? What can they do to actually step away and not get too consumed?
Well, the first thing is expect to experience anxiety. Like, expect it to not feel comfortable. That's the first thing. Because again, it's like, you can become addicted. That is a real factual addiction. So guess what? You're going to withdraw from that. You're going to have withdrawal symptoms. So again, it's about being honest with yourself. You know, that whole, am I prepared to go through with this? Is this something I definitely want to do? I always love to write stuff down. Like, that's what I get a lot of my clients to do. You know, if you can visually see it and you write it and you connect with it, it holds a lot of value. So what I say to people is, you know, when you're looking to change, write down the things you're not happy with, write down the things you want. And I guarantee they can write 50 what they're not happy with, but what they want, they have no idea, because they're so consumed in that bubble of negativity and toxicity. It's like, how do I get out of that?
I'm watching everyone else.
Right, exactly.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? Confusion.
Yeah. People
say, well, let's see how many relate to this. Typical thing that comes up all the time, very common. I want to make more money, but I don't know what to do. I don't know whether to be with someone or not to be with someone. Everyone is so confused, because I think there is just an abundance of options, and very quick options. You know, we were talking previously on another podcast, is quite frankly, it's nuts to think that you can choose your partner by swiping now and a checklist. That's kind of crazy, really, that rather than going and meeting someone and really touching base, you can kind of just check them out online and just see if they're ticking the boxes. And then you're swiping someone who could have been perfectly good for you. It's a bit bonkers, right?
Yeah, I mean, I personally, look, we've got to be real here in that social media is not going away. Online dating's not going away. This is the world we live in. You know, certainly for you and I growing up, you know, societal norms where you're married by your 20, you've got your kids, but right?
Yeah.
You know, these are the societal norms that certain people are still holding on to. That's no longer the reality. So does online dating work? Yes. But the problem with it is people use it for validation, right? Like you said, oh, how many likes have I had today? 20. Oh, I must be sought after. This is great. Not that you think that, but that's how you feel, right?
The dopamine hit.
Yeah. People don't recognize that. People want to connect based, again, this is old style dating, right? Based on societal norms. The man's got to be the provider. He's got to have X, Y, Z in order. I'm going to be the housewife. That's what I'm looking for in terms of a partner. Do they tick off all these things? Remove that tick list. Learn about yourself. Find out about who you are as a person. You know, let me ask you, Aaron. Who is Aaron?
It was good question. I'll give you an honest answer. Aaron's very content. Content. I am happy. I am content.
Okay, I like that, because normally when I ask someone that, they'll come back with, I'm Aaron, I run multiple businesses, I'm a businessman, I'm an entrepreneur. Label, 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 label.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, we're going to get on. Oh, we're going to have a good one.
But what I liked is that you went, I'm happy, I'm content. You know how you feel as a person. Okay, you didn't give me any traits as such, but you know how you feel. Most people don't know that.
Yeah. We were going to go down this a little bit further, but we're here, is that contentment, I feel, counteracts midlife crisis. I mean, a midlife crisis now isn't really a midlife crisis. I mean, we're having people in their 20s or their late 50s. It's just, I think it's midlife crisis to me, I said this before, is someone I believe that has got to a stage of their life where they're now perhaps in resentment, like you said. They're looking back thinking, bloody hell, I should have done that.
Yeah.
Or thinking, looking at their partner, husband or wife, and thinking, bloody hell, you held me back. I should have gone and done that job, or I should have started that business because I could have been here and my friends are there. I think it's reflection, thinking you didn't do what you wanted to do, or at least give it a go. And I would say, just for me, when I say I'm content, is that I've always kind of given whatever. I've had supportive people around me. I've had a lovely family. My parents they've not always understood what I do, but they've always just said, we're with you. Yeah. Don't know what you do, but we hope you get on really well. And my family's the same. And I try and keep my son involved as well. Like he comes up all the time. He weren't able to today because I had to pull him out of school, but I didn't. He's not here, by the way. But yeah, just content. And I think you're absolutely right. There's too many labels. And what I want to throw at you, just staying on this sort of content midlife crisis, let's cover this off, is too many people, I talk about this in my life, too many people love to go to a barbecue and tell everyone what their job title is.
But that's because that's what they believe defines them.
Yeah.
That we have become a society of definition of labels. And that's what creates status or hierarchy. Whereas before, and we all do it, no one's immune to this. You judge someone by their car. Oh, they drive a Ford, do they? Huh. Oh, you drive a Mercedes. Yeah, they're more up my street. We all do it. But now we're doing it with labels such as profession.
Yeah. The problem is instant access to bios. Everyone can write their own bio.
Right, yeah.
That's the problem. We're living online, and the bio. I mean, my God, Paul, you're in property. I can tell you now that I know many people that have got property investor in their bio and they've never bought a property. It's almost like, it's like catch-22. Yes, you've got to paint yourself that image and that picture and put yourself in that mind frame. But I think what people do is we have so many titles. It's like, it's almost overwhelming. And then I think people sit on their own sometimes and they go, I'm not really all of those though. And then it's keeping up appearances.
Right.
Mrs.
Right.
Bouquet, love that program.
Yeah.
But it is, isn't it? And I think that's where a lot of people are struggling, is there's this keeping up appearances. You hit the nail on the head. Let's talk more about that. Why are we in a world where we need to buy everything to impress someone else?
So again, as we've evolved as humans, we're coming into a very interesting age, shall we say. Facebook, I believe, has been around for, say, 20 odd years now. The generation that's coming through from then. So when Facebook first came out, parents were like documenting their children's lives like there's no tomorrow. Oh, they've eaten their first Weetabix. Like everything. Oh, look, they're naked on a potty. Like everything, their whole life has been documented. Smile for the camera, smile. Make sure you smile, 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 smile. This is so toxic and damaging for kids. I can't even begin to tell you where that starts. But when a child learns, they have to perform every time a camera comes out. They're only accepted and told they're good when they're behaving by doing what they're told because a camera's out.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what that does to their mentality as they grow up? So now we're hitting a generation where kids have grown up believing that is how you get validation. That is how you get acceptance. That's how you get status in society. And again, how do you get even more status? You post a picture with an expensive bag or shoes, whatever, and people comment. And then you're like, yes, that makes sense. People like me because I have expensive things. But that's how we've been trained. And again, this is what concerns me with the generation coming through, because that is their core belief system.
Yeah.
Whether hopefully they'll look back on this after hearing what I say and go, shit, she's right.
Yeah.
Because if you took away all the likes and all the comments of social media posts, how many people do you think would post?
Yeah. It's worrying, isn't it? I mean,
it's concern, yeah.
As a father as well, I mean, my son's very grounded. You know, he's brought up very well. He's very well balanced. I come from a very humble background as well. So I've got good roots in me, and we really instill that in our son. But what is concerning is that, you know, when we were at school, you know, well before, you know, Paul was at school years ago, weren't you, Paul? You know, many years ago. There was no cameras back then. But no, look, when we were at school, I always rinse him, by the way, at the podcast. I got to, because he can't say anything either. It's the narcissist in him. There we go.
You walked into that.
Yeah, I did, yeah. I'll set myself up. But no, is that, you know, back at school, you kind of had the popular kids and stuff like that, but they were popular within the school, as in, it was all in-house.
Right, and it was based off of who they were as a person and how they interact with other people. Kids don't play nowadays. Play is crucial to our development. How do kids play nowadays? Online. I'm the winner. I'm better than you. I'm the winner. What do you think that creates?
Yeah.
It doesn't create social skills. Whereas before, like you and I, we would go out and play with our friends. Christ knows what we used to get up to, but you know,
real interaction though.
Yeah, human interaction. Whereas now, and this is again where I talk about the toxic cultures getting bred into us, when they're online playing computer games and they're winning, they're killing people with some of these games. What is that? That's removing empathy. That's increasing, you know, you get validation by being the best.
Almost become numb to it.
Right.
Yeah. This is what's worrying about schools, is that the divide is so much bigger when a male or a female in the school now has 50,000 followers to some kid who may not be able to afford a phone or maybe doesn't have exposure. But now the divide is so much bigger, and I'm so much better than you as a 14, 15-year-old because I have 50,000 followers, and some of them do. And that's the scary thing. And it's like, don't talk to me. I'm blue tick and I'm 15. Like, who are you?
Yeah.
It's worrying.
It is very worrying. And, you know, me personally, certainly from an emotional and a mental development point of view, 16 should be like where kids can start playing about with that stuff, personally.
Yeah, possibly. Well, the thing is, we can't control it. That's
you can't.
Because I would say older, but there's no way of controlling it. Which brings us nicely on to the sort of the damaging side of this world that we're in. We were talking about, you know, the free reign to speak. You know, we're here doing a podcast. We can talk about what we want to. There's probably some people that will always disagree with things that we're saying. There's always going to be someone opposing it. But we were talking about becoming numb to what should pull on emotion, empathy, compassion, is the content that is being put out by some people where it is becoming almost like a numbing tool, that if you do something horrific to a person, or if you take a career that perhaps isn't going to benefit you long term and relationships, no one blinks an eyelid. It's just the norm, which is scary because I'll just say this very quick. I had a friend who had a bunch of kids turn up at his school, the same school I went to when I was younger, and they pulled a knife out on the dad because the son owed money for a vape. That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
But it's seen as the norm because of the content. What do you think on that?
Again, it proves my point. We are turning into a very toxic culture. And if this isn't taken seriously, you know, watch what's going to happen, because it's not going to be good. And it's all well and good, right? You know, like the Caroline Flack thing, that was huge. Be kind, be kind. That slogan was everywhere. That's been forgotten about. Yeah. Again, because unfortunately, when someone has an emotional response, that's what sells. Whether they agree or disagree, having disagreements is healthy, it's good, right? But how you approach that with other people is what makes you someone that's toxic or someone that's healthy. You know, just putting your point across, again, in relationships, you can have arguments. I would expect couples to have arguments, healthy arguments, not physical arguments, but ones where you can get a resolve. So it's like, the problem is, again, people have suffered a lot of trauma growing up. Like, trauma begins in childhood. That's where it starts. And it's something that's not always recognised, because trauma is from an experience, not the experience itself. So I have a lot of people say to me, well, you know, I was sexually abused, so that means my trauma's way worse than that person that was just punched in the face on the street. Yeah. No, because we're all different humans and we interpret things very differently. And if you're a very sensitive individual, that trauma is going to impact you far more than the person that was perhaps sexually abused, you know, and I'm not downplaying experiences at all, but trauma is a feeling after the event. So children are all holding on to this, right? And they're acting out. vulnerability, right, is perceived to be a feminine emotion. If you're vulnerable, Aaron, you're like a woman. That's not true. For us to connect as humans, we need to be vulnerable. All of us, male, female, it doesn't matter. But what's happening now, we're getting this masculine and feminine toxicity coming through, right? Oh, you can't be like that because that's too feminine.
Yeah.
You need to be more masculine. You need to be more of a man. Now we're creating more disconnect when there already is a disconnect because people shy away from opening up to other people based off their responses because a lot of people are ignorant.
Yeah.
You know?
But is this a bigger picture here? Is this what is wanted by things that we have no idea what's going on behind the scenes? Because stuff like this, these are problems that can be resolved. Like they can be resolved.
For sure, yeah.
They can, but they're not, which makes you think, you know, if you're a person that just takes a moment just to really question things, you know, I like to sort of think of it as, you know, you could be a sheep or you could be a shepherd and you can make up your own decisions, you know, try not to follow the flock, you know, follow the herd or whatever. But and question this because these problems can be resolved and a divide is being caused. And what's really getting me at the moment is we've gone from, I don't know, we were talking about the Piers Morgan Uncensored, but there was a point that is totally true, is that we have facts and we have reality and you can't sort of question real facts. But now new facts are made depending on what the person believes.
Right.
Which now never even opens up for a debate, because if you believe your fact and I believe mine, well, there's no point in us even talking because we're never going to get anywhere because a new fact has been created. How, I don't know, how do we overcome that? I don't even see how you do.
So again, this is where we're talking about personality style, right? Because if you've got someone that has a narcissistic personality style, so superior, I'm always right, selfish to a fault, doesn't care about anyone else, but they're seeking a high degree of validation, which they do online, there's plenty of them on there. They don't care about anyone else. And that's what makes them do so well, because the emotional responses they're eliciting from other people, right? Unfortunately, when you've got a trauma victim, they're incredibly vulnerable. So those vulnerable people latch on to one thing they say and they believe they found like a savior. This person's going to be the person, and they absorb it. Now, what people are unaware of with these kinds of people, they're doing what I would call a covert form of brainwashing. So covert means like undercover. So it's not obvious, right? Yeah. The more someone hears something, the more it becomes true. Now, negative or positive doesn't come into it. And if you're vulnerable and you're picking up on something that hits you and you feel it, again, this person's not in touch with how they feel at all. So they have this response. They found their savior and they listen intently and they just get brainwashed to it. So the problem you've got is, how do you prove? So I'm talking about social media giants now.
Yeah.
How do they go, okay, what they're doing is a form of covert brainwashing here and manipulation. How do they prove that? They can't. That it needs to be, which is what happened to a few people, you know, absolute uproar from numerous people that push these social media giants into a position where they have to do something about it, removing accounts, right? But this is done on a high scale. It's not just from one person that says, I don't like this person. I don't like what they're saying.
Yeah.
We're talking about a big group of people that are seriously affected by this, that have good arguments, and social media giants have to pay attention.
Yeah.
And again, as we move into this generation, this needs to be taken seriously. You know, as a professional, I have a duty of care with every word that comes out of my mouth, and I'm very aware of that. People that are not professionals, they don't care.
Yeah.
And certainly people that are narcissistic say what the hell they want because it's their platform.
And do you know what's a real shame is that spreading a good message and trying to get it out to as many people, if it doesn't fit the agenda and you're making too much of a movement and you're having too much of a positive influence, they just get rid.
Yeah.
And that's what's so insane about it, is you could be, if it's not going to feed or line someone's pocket, you know, line the purse, and it's not going along with whatever is going on behind this, you know, we're painting a bigger picture here, whatever, if it's not heading in that same direction, they just wipe you out. And that's what I find really, really frustrating, is you put a lot of work into these platforms and it's like you're always working for them anyway because they get rid of you when they want.
Yeah.
And that's the real shame. This podcast is sponsored by paulstapleton.co.uk, offering expert services in one-to-one mentorship. If you are looking for business consultancy, property sourcing training, social media advice, or sales negotiating, then this is the place to educate yourself. Comparison, social media and comparison is quite literally killing people at the moment. It's affecting people and their mental health. Everyone should have this. Everyone should be on holiday making loads of money, ripped bodies, female beach bodies. How do you overcome comparison?
Again, this goes back to the individual actually making a decision and being aware of, you know, like, would I love a female beach body? You're damn right I would, right? But the reality is it's not happening for whatever reason, yeah? But if I keep looking at that, right, and I had this not so long ago, being honest now, and I was like, do you know what? Fuck it, I'm going to go to Turkey and I'm going to have liposuction done. And I paid a deposit for it.
Wow.
And then I've got a therapist who I catch up with regularly, and I was telling her, and she went, Rebecca, what are you doing? She's like, have you seriously thought about this? You know, like, seriously. And I sat back and I assessed myself and I thought, shit, I am doing this based off of what other people deem to be acceptable. Because I am comfortable in my own skin, you know. But would I have liked that? Yes. Would it have been expensive mentally and emotionally? You bet it would have.
Yeah.
And then where do you stop with that? Because you guarantee I wouldn't have been happy, right? So,
leads on to the next thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is about being aware and going, because again, the algorithms are clever. You only have to look at one beach body and then you got 100 coming through.
Yeah.
It's non-stop, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's about being aware, being very particular about what you take in, because it's way too easy to compare nowadays. And no one wants to be individual. You know, everyone wants to aspire to be like someone else. And inspiration's great, right? We all want a bit of inspiration, but you're never going to be that person, ever.
Yeah.
Accept that and actually look at what you can take from it as opposed to trying to be that person.
And this is why you need to detox off social media so you can get to know you.
Yeah.
It's very simple. If you're not content and you haven't taken some time out for yourself to really understand what you want and stop looking at other people, you're going to have all these problems. So I totally agree. Content, you know, this word, I've spoken about it a lot. You know, someone asked me once, what's your version of success? And like I say, you know, I've said it a million times, so it'd be an old record for some people. But, you know, I grew up, we didn't have a lot of money, very humble, very different lifestyle when I grew up. Anyway, had my son and I was like, I need to get my shit in gear. You know, I need to get my act together. Now, success to me is I'm able to do what I want every day. I'm able to strive for something more and I'm able to have fun along the way. And then someone said, well, what's your end goal? And I just said, I just like a 2-little bed cottage in the middle of nowhere, copper pans, I get fat and I go shooting on a Sunday. That's all I'm bothered. And I'll have a little poxy electric car. Not bothered about anything else. And it's so funny because you ask a lot of other people, especially as they're coming up through the ages, they want the fast cars, they want the Rolex, they want this, they want an incredible woman on their arm or an incredible high earning man and stuff like this. And I just think you're all delirious because that's not real life. And I feel, you know, listening to you, you've got a really good understanding and perspective. And you said the word awareness. I find for people to make good strides and success in their life, you either need to have a child so you get perspective that there's someone in the world bigger than you, or you have to have good, smart awareness. It's very simple. So how do we get that awareness? Where do you start to get good awareness?
Definitely work with someone. Because like I think when I notice that the first thing I always notice when someone I know is not aware and not doesn't have a high level of emotional intelligence is I'll give them feedback on something and they're not aware of A, how it made them feel, B, how they're reacting to it, and C, what they're actually saying.
Yeah.
So there's no awareness there. So the first thing I'd say is be open to criticism and actually ask for it. Like put yourself in an uncomfortable position and actually say, you know, Aaron, can I ask for some feedback? Do you think this podcast is going well? And be open to that. And whatever you say, take it in and ask more questions. Like curiosity is a great thing, right? And people have lost that. So become curious and that's what you're going to learn more about yourself. But ultimately, it's definitely working with someone. And if you can't afford to work with someone, ask your friend to be accountable. Say to them, look, I'm trying to practice awareness. This is what I'm planning on doing. I'm going to be asking you questions. I'm probably going to drive you mad. But I just want a bit of, are you open for that? I bet they'll say yes.
Yeah. Or watch content that's free.
Exactly.
that helps. And that's the brilliant thing about live streaming is you can interact. And if you don't want to poke your head out of the parapet, you can watch lives and listen and learn. The other thing is as well, this is what gets me, always be the creator, not the consumer, because so many people say, did you see that? No. Did you not? No, I've actually blocked them. Because that's the brilliant thing with social media. You know, I would talk to the people that I've blocked, but you're not going to see it. So there are so many people that I feel have a real sort of toxic aura about them that I don't agree with it. And I don't think it's healthy for other people or for me. I just block. And I think too many people are scared of going, well, if I block, I won't see. I won't know what's going on.
Yeah, because it's that fear of missing out, right? FOMO. But
yeah.
Look, and another thing people do, which is this damages your self-esteem so much, is blocking and unblocking. I'm going to block Aaron. Month goes by, I need to see what he's doing. And I unblock and I check. That tells me I can't trust myself. That also tells me I feel like I need that, you know, that kick from something. Worst thing, if you're blocking, you stand by it and that goes till the day you die.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're going against yourself.
Right.
You start questioning yourself. You start having conversations with yourself, and then you start thinking there's an issue.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting one. I'm not going to mention names, but I have a few friends that perhaps are going through some struggle with some relationships right now. I try to give my advice, but when people have parted separate ways, there is this social media leverage in knowing that they might see their profiles. What is the best thing to do for a female or a male when there has been a part in a relationship, but the socials haven't been blocked so you could both see each other? What do you think you do?
Well, I think you're setting yourself up for failure, first of all. You're opening yourself up to a world of more trauma, more problems. Again, I mean, you haven't given me much context on that, but two healthy individuals can part and it's not a problem looking at each other's socials. When you're dealing with toxic individuals, they use that as a way to get at the other person. So if you've got children, it's a little bit different. But if you don't have children with someone and you split up, you've really got to remove that person from your life on all avenues, because it's not healthy. And the comparison always comes in when that your ex gets a new partner, and straight away, what does it do? It triggers you like crazy, sends you into a spiral. That's not healthy. That's not helping you.
And people almost go into their own like detective mode.
Right, they go nuts.
They all turn into like Inspector Poirot, and they look at too much what they should. And then again, you start making up stories, don't you? And I know, I've had so many conversations with some friends recently who have sort of going through things. And I've just said, I think you just need to block. Just turn it off, because this we could be talking in 6 months' time and having the same conversation.
Yeah.
You're going to be worse for wear. Like, you're not going to be in a great place. And I think that's the moment you need to detox. I took 7 months off Instagram, and I can tell you now, it's the best thing I ever done, because I really had a detached moment happen where when I came back, I said, I almost did the Ed Sheeran thing. It's just for marketing now. That's it. It's only marketing.
Yeah. Exactly what you use mine
Take
for.
on the team. I love what you said at the beginning. Take on a team. So that best bit of advice, stay detached, detox, and take on a team. How do we go about putting out a really good message and building a brand? Because your brand is incredible. I look at things in fine detail, aesthetically very good, very consistent. You've generated clients. If people are watching this thinking, well, I do want to use it for good, what would you say your first sort of steps would be using socials in the right way?
The first thing is to be authentic. Again, when there's so little and few people that are authentic nowadays, for fear of being rejected, for fear of what other people are going to say. Like when I did my research before I did TikTok, I was like, okay, whose accounts do I like? What are they doing? How are they doing it? And for me, I didn't want it to be like a big show and big performance. So I just wanted it to be the message. I'm very straightforward. I'm very black and white. I'm very direct. So I wanted it to come across that way. Did I practice like crazy? You bet I did. I didn't do my first TikTok and it was great. I think it took me about 50 takes.
Yeah.
That's the reality. And I think it is about just being authentic. Like, what do you want to talk about? Don't look at someone else and think, oh, okay, they've done well with that. I'm going to try and imitate that. Because what's going to happen? Someone's going to say, oh, you're trying to be like, whoever. No, because then that's going to put you off and you're going to think, oh, maybe I shouldn't. But the truth is you probably did copy them.
Yeah.
So just be authentic. People buy people, right?
Yeah.
With so many fake people out there, trust me, when you're authentic, people grab to that.
They can tell.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, it's less tiring. I think that's a great message, is that if you are starting out on social media and you want to build a business and a brand, it's less tiring to be yourself.
Right, absolutely.
And people actually buy into you. You know, I have some lovely messages where people are like, honestly, just the way that you talk is a breath of fresh air, and I relate to it.
Yeah.
And I've always said to people, the way I am on camera is the way that I'm off camera. And it's for me, it's less tiring. And then when I get home at the end of the day, I can just go, right, phone's off.
Yeah.
And again, when you take on a team, you're like, everything's still running and you haven't got to do it, and that's what's nice about it. I think there are so many pros. Right, I want to talk about the male side coming up. Young lads coming up who we've seen a huge amount of Tate. We've seen a huge amount of these like sort of real strong males putting out. I think there's also a little bit of content, viral, clickbait stuff out there, of course, to get the brand out there. But what messages should we be passing on to the younger generation, especially males, to what they see? I'm just going to say it as it is. They're seeing a lot of adult entertainment videos. They have access to everything. The reason I'm not saying the certain word is because TikTok doesn't like the actual word. So XX videos, when they have access to this, I don't think young lads know how damaging that is for their future partners, because they're building an expectation for their future partner. Same goes for women. What's the counter to that? Can we battle that at all?
I mean, if someone's realistic about this, girls that perform on certain platforms, it's a performance.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether it's XXX, it's a performance. People need to be realistic with that. Also, if young lads are getting addicted to that, they've got to be realistic with themselves. This is becoming an addiction. It's not healthy. I always go back to what is healthy for you. Again, we're coming into a digital era. We've been in it a while. So there's going to be loads of XX girls. That's becoming a thing because it's easy. Women don't have pride in going and getting a decent education and a profession now.
Yeah.
It's far easier to go and do that, right? So, and it's not really frowned upon. Like, the reality is it's not, it's not taboo anymore. Yeah. So it is just about being real. And I think, when you're talking about dating, especially with young guys and stuff, if you're someone that is dating, if someone behaves in a certain way you don't like, or you feel disrespected, or however, it's down to you to end that, not put up with it and make excuses for them.
Yeah.
Oh, he's like that because he watches a lot of, porn. He wants to
write it off, basically.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Look, if that's who he wants to be and that doesn't work with you, take yourself out of that situation.
So, good question then. What are the signs for someone who's starting to date someone new that there might be issues? Maybe they have an addiction with adult entertainment, or maybe they're thinking about, well, if I start this career, maybe I can earn some more money. Are there early signs that, it's such a shame to say this, like, you've got to look out for these signs, but especially like the whole, at the end of the meal, well, Rebecca, are you getting the IV? Well, hang on a minute. You've just been talking about how you're an entrepreneur and a business owner. Surely you're, well, I know, but it's like, are there early signs? Who pays for the meal? Like, this kind of stuff. What do we do?
Yeah, I mean, I love that you asked me that, because the amount every day, Rebecca, tell me the signs of this, tell me the signs. Look, the truth is, remember, as we evolve and we go through this digital age, I expose narcissists like there's no tomorrow. So people they're learning the signs. But what, you don't think narcissists are learning this? And now they're evolving and changing so they don't get caught? Of course they are.
Yeah.
The key is you, right? Learn what your values are. Learn what your morals are. Learn what your standards are. Do you have a high standard? Are you down dating? Because if you are, it's time to upgrade, right? Because you're always going to be disappointed. Goes back to, again, if you're someone that has that moral and value mentality of, speaking from me, as a woman, would I expect a man to pay? Probably. If he expected me to pay, I can tell you I'd never see him again, but I always offer to pay my half.
Yeah.
I always insist actually on paying my half.
Yeah.
So again, that goes down to me with my values and morals. So if I met someone that didn't align with those, they're not going to be a good match for me.
Yeah.
So it goes back to knowing yourself.
Yeah. Also, it's like just a bit of old romance. There's nothing wrong with that. I think
Yeah.
you're going to pick it up in the conversation. I think if you're having conversation, you can kind of tell. And I think you should identify early signs. And I think the conversation should probably indicate who's going to pay. And I also think, look, I'm saying this as a man, I think a man should pay. If they're finding the woman attractive, they're having great conversation, they've set up the date for a reason, obviously. I think it's quite old school.
Yeah,
I don't think I don't know why we want to get rid of the old school and debate it so much, and the man shouldn't pay and stuff like this. I think it's just a bit of.
But then we're going back to what you said earlier. It's clickbait, right?
Yeah.
Because imagine how much emotional response that's going to create.
Yeah. But imagine that. You go on the date and you get to the bill and the woman goes, "You paying?" Or, the man goes, "Well, I don't know, do you want to go halves?" Imagine you do stay together and your son or your daughter goes, "Oh, how did you treat mum the first date?" "Well, I made her pay, didn't I?" I don't know, I did Northern, but but you want a bit of a story, don't you? You want a bit of old romance and stuff like that. I don't know. That's just me. But again, you said the word evolving. Things are evolving so quick, and everyone has their own beliefs and stuff like that. With socials is a big part of our life. We can't get away from it. But how do we stay mentally sane throughout what just seems to be a very busy world? I don't know if you've been asked this question, but everyone always asks, "You going to Dubai?" "No." "Are you?" Yeah, I'm going to Dubai." Like, everything's so busy. We've got to go here, we've got to go there, we've got to get a photo. How do you remain kind of very sort of level-headed in a busy world?
Me personally, so I do a lot of meditation, I do a lot of yoga. I'm very particular at what I consume in terms of content, because for me, authenticity is so, that's one of my core values. And yeah, everyone wants to go to Dubai. I went there years ago and I was bored stiff. It's not my cup of tea. And again, it's that, are you following social norms? Are you following what everyone else seems to think's cool and gives you status? Or are you actually doing what you want to do?
Yeah. I think it's just following everyone else, isn't it? I have no intention of going to Dubai. Funny enough, Jason, who's coming in after he's just got back from Dubai, and he said, "Mate, it was so boring. Everyone's so pretentious, and everyone's constantly taking photos. It's like overwhelming. It's just like, my God, get some perspective." I think having downtime, what's kept me fairly sane is having that switch off period in the evening. Paul and I, we still talk late, don't we, sometimes, and, about certain business stuff, but it's all very casual, isn't it? Just on WhatsApp or voice notes. But having a switch off period where you get back to real life. Like last night, actually, I had a really good friend over. We had a bonfire and a barbecue, me and him just chilling around the fire. It was very primal. But it was nice because there was no phones, there was nothing. And it was just in the moment talking about memories that me and him have had and just reminiscing. And I think more people need to do that.
Absolutely.
Put the phone down, isn't it? It's just like, let go of the phone.
Yeah, just give yourself time to be present. And again, connect with people, real people, in person.
Yeah. So let's talk about schools very briefly. We sort of mentioned it off camera earlier. There's so much information in the world now. There's an abundance of resources, and obviously kids are learning things a lot quicker. If I have a conversation with my son, I can tell you now, I was not talking like him at 9 years old. So kids are advancing a lot quicker. Although watching that clip on Piers Morgan, you wouldn't think that guy's advanced much. But kids are advancing quicker. We often say to our son, "Don't grow old." How do we slow that down and kind of, how do we keep them level-headed? What things do you think we can do to safeguard kids now?
So again, we're talking about realities of children learn from their parents, their caregivers. So you've got to be the one to set the example. All right, you've got to be the one to, at dinner, we all sit around a table and have dinner. This becomes a normal thing. Breakfast in the mornings. No sitting on the iPad and mum and dad are talking and they're just doing whatever they're doing on the iPad. No, teach them the importance of presence, of being in the moment, of empathy, of connecting, of communication. I mean, I heard a podcast the other day and it was very upsetting about how they've changed the curriculum. This was in a US school, so I don't know about UK, but how they teach children now to read. Certainly growing up, it used to be you'd learn like the sound, R, oo, ah, e. So when you teach children to read, that's what you would teach them, so they would learn how to piece words together. Now they're teaching them what would be the advanced reading styles for someone who's an advanced reader by memorizing words. So they don't actually know how to sound the or Rebecca, but they can see it and they can go, oh, that means that means Rebecca. And they learn it by words. So then when they get a word they haven't memorized, they have no idea how to sound the word to learn it. That's very frightening.
Yeah.
Very frightening.
That's probably going to become worse with like AI. It'll be quicker learning. It'll be like, hey, everyone, learn to write an email and a book. Everyone open up Chat GPT. Now you're going to type keywords and it's going to be stuff like that. It's like taking all the context out of it and it's the shortcut. Again, everything is, I want it now. I want it quick. And I think that will move into education is like, you know, you haven't got to write the full 4,000 words, but we are going to use the keywords to put into the system, which is going to generate your 4,000 words, which then we lose that part of our education.
It's almost like they've stripped out the basics, you know, like they've removed the basic elements and just, I get it. Like you want people to be more efficient, of course. And we are evolving, right? But removing that core component of who we are as humans, we are humans.
Yeah.
You know, we have certain needs. And the reason children suffer with so much trauma is because their emotional needs are not being met. And that's not to say all parents are abusing their children. I'm not saying that. But as parents, you can only do what you can do. Now, if your child, let me ask you, Aaron, if your son was naughty, would you ever say to him, right, you go in that corner now, time out?
We don't do that anymore, do you?
Right, because what does it do? It strips away the child's ability to learn what's right and wrong because it's all your way.
Yeah.
There's no conversation.
No reasoning behind it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, and again, things like sleeping, there was this thing about, you know, it's very much, I can't think of the name of it, but it's very widely pushed now. If your child cries at night, baby, you leave it. You sleep train it. That's what it was. Sleep train it to sleep through the night. Well, that's a natural instinct. You wouldn't be able to say to a cat, your kitten's crying, don't pick it up because it will stop. Do children stop crying eventually? Yes, because they learn to self-soothe. But the instinct is they just want the mother or the parent to pick them up and feel safe.
Yeah.
So,
and normally that's a lack of communication because our son screamed to the high heavens. He was a screamer the whole time. And this isn't even a joke what I'm about to tell you. For about 18 months, most nights, we would have my shotgun ear defenders on, both of us, because it was so bad.
Wow.
It was so bad. But what we found is later in life, he doesn't stop talking. Like, I kid you not, from 6 till, you know, I won't tell you what time he goes to bed, but when he goes to bed, he doesn't stop talking. You know, he's starting to do more of my content and stuff like this. And I cover his face. You know, he wears this stormtrooper outfit to keep his face covered. But he is an absolute talker and he loves talking. But that looking back now and reflecting on it, really, that was his way of communicating. And we always went to him. But that's the thing, children communicate in their own way.
Right.
And they're not, I don't think it should be neglected. I think it should be understood and try and figure out your own child.
Precisely. And you've got to remember, children up until the age of about 8, they only absorb emotions. They don't understand them. It's like, you know, you can't have a conversation with them and explain what sadness is. They just feel something and they react. Well, if you're telling them, no, that's naughty what you're doing, but they feel really sad.
Yeah.
That's denying their reality of how they feel.
Yeah.
So they grow up to suppress that emotion, which is incredibly unhealthy.
Yeah, and then they don't talk out. They might not say something.
Exactly.
Something happens at school. There's always a knock-on effect. I just want to say this, by the way. Yes, I said shotgun. I have a license, by the way. I know there's going to be someone that will pick up on that. Why have you got shotguns? I have a license. Now, sort of narcissist traits in the workplace. I obviously talk a lot about workplace. You know, it's funny, I talk a lot about it as if almost I had all these problems. I just know a lot of the problems go on, and actually everyone left me alone at work. But people do struggle with certain managers, bullying, traits of bosses that are almost pushed to have that influence of cracking the whip. How do people deal? And I'll tell you what, there's many of them. Narcissistic people in the workplace, especially when given a power role to offload that within the safe 4 walls, right? So I'm the manager now and I get to control all of you. How do we deal with these managers and seniors?
I mean, look, it's a really tough one, right? Because the problem you have with certainly narcissism expels and gets better the more power someone has. So, for instance, you wouldn't get a sensitive, empathetic person in a high-powered role. They couldn't cope physically. But a narcissist thrives in that environment. So the problem you have, the more power you give someone, the more probability they are going to be highly narcissistic, if not clinically narcissistic. So if you've got people above that manager, chances are they've put them in that role because they connect on that level. Now, I've known clients, and again, this is a really difficult thing to do, but I've known clients that have been in very big companies, well-known companies. They've gone the whole route, documenting everything, documenting all of the behaviour, the abuse, taken it to head office. They've had, the big meeting, and the boss basically says, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get you to sign this gag order, and we're going to pay you off.
Yeah, I know many of that.
Right? Mm-hmm. So the narcissistic managers never leave. They've also, the other problem you've got in those kind of corporations is they have their own psych team. So here's the thing, when you're in those kind of environments, work environments, you're going to be suffering with anxiety, depression, brain fog. Your performance is going to plummet. Not because of who you are as a person, but because of how you're being treated. So now the work says, okay, you've got to go off sick. You've got to have time off sick because you're not well and you're not performing. They go off sick, they come back, they get the psych evaluation.
Performance review comes in.
Here we go. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do you deal with that? Because they're like, oh, you want to take us to court and sue us. But hang on a minute. You're off sick because you can't perform the role.
Yeah. You're not the stable one.
Yeah. And let's face it, when you've got people in that level of work, managerial positions, they're not idiots. They're very clever. Yeah. And again, we're talking about covert manipulation. Sarky comments. How do you prove that? You can't go around with a camera on. That's illegal. Right? You can't do that. So there's only so much you can do. And I know it's hard, and again, to say, if you're in that environment, you need to leave and find a different place because not everyone has that pleasure. But unfortunately, that's the only thing you can do. And don't put those people in those roles in the first place, right?
This is it.
That's the other thing.
Rebecca, you and I, as a power team, need to go into big corporations. The only problem is they won't let us in.
No.
Because everyone will be leaving with us. This is the thing. In employment, and they are so smart, HR.
Oh, they're all in on it.
They're all narcissists. They're all aligned. It's all to protect the company. And this is the thing. There is a bigger picture. They will push you down that. Take sick. Now we've got to put you on a performance review. Uh-huh. You try and challenge us. Well, the problem is you're not mentally stable because we put you on sick. You had to leave, blah, blah, blah. We now are going to get you out. It can never be challenged. And you hit the nail on the head. Anyone who's employed, I know you're going to relate to this. Narcissists employ other narcissists to control essentially what they call the minions. Gets on my absolute gripe. But they couldn't do that with me, I tell you that. That's why I caused a lot of problems. I would speak up all the time. Because I knew myself, again, going back to this whole content, I had the backbone. I kid you not. I would go all the way. I was that pain in the arse, by the way. You can probably tell. But I honestly, and I just wish more people would really stand up for themselves. However, I'm fully aware it really affects people with anxiety.
Oh, massively.
It has put people on tablets. I know them, right?
Yeah, and again, it's like, because mental health is acceptable now, right? It's very much accepted. So, okay, you're struggling mentally, pills, time off, see our psych, okay, now we've done our checklist, we're all good. But they never deal with the core problem, which is that employee, that manager.
Yeah, listen to a book called 12 and a Half by Gary Vee. You won't want to go back to your employed job. That's the reality, though. I know so many people who ended up climbing up the ladder, and I would just say to them, dude, or whoever I was talking to, do you, for $4,000, you want the puppet strings tighter, and you're going to see your family less, and you're going to be on call all the time? You start a business, you get a $4,000 pay rise every month if you do well. And I just try to speak to some of these people who I'm sort of friendly with and just say, look, if you climb this ladder, you are only becoming a more movable puppet. And they don't see it because there's this very clever political competition normally being controlled by these narcissistic traits. And you said it earlier, there's not enough compassion or empathy. And what really gets me, and then I'd just love to hear your take on this, is from a managerial point or a leader standpoint, more people should say, look, Dave or Lucy, could I have a chat with you? Look, your performance hasn't been great. Is everything all right? I haven't spoken to you for a little while. I just wanted to chat with you. Just wanted to understand, because normally you're top notch. Is there something going on? Why are we not having more of those conversations rather than cracking the whip?
Again, because I believe it's all target driven, right? So why would you take time out of your day to deal with that? You've got to remember, some people, not everyone is at that level. Not everyone. And not everyone can start and run their own businesses. That's hard work, right? So some people need to be employment and it works for them, but they just need a bit of compassion. But when it's a busy environment where they're pushing, like certainly since the pandemic hit, from what I know is, you know, they've made job roles even tighter. They expect twice as much from you, but they've not increased your salary, or they've not given you more time or more help. So they're pulling the purse strings on everything now because of what's going on. Where are they going to find the time to sit down and deal with someone that's struggling?
So what does someone do if someone's really struggling at work with mental health, anxiety, bullying, managers putting pressure on them, they're being singled out, you know, whatever it is, harassment? Do they leave, or do they fight the system, which is draining? Or do they just sort of say, I can't do this anymore, I have got to find another job? Because I know some people are like, if I leave, they win. I could take the payout system, I feel like I've been used. But if I fight it, I could be really drained and it could affect my family life. What do you think people should do?
The truth is, when you go up against those kind of narcissistic corporations, they will fight you to the death and they will throw so much money into it. Those guys love going to court. They love suing people. They love that. They're going to win. So the reality of the situation is, whatever you do, you're not going to win against this. So protect yourself, walk away from it and find something else.
Yeah.
Go down whichever route works best for you,
Yeah.
because it's not going to get any better. Like, that's the reality of the situation.
This is why I think it's really important for people to have something on the side that they can have as fulfillment and something to aim towards, because I really believe that where people get sucked into the very clever system of corporate companies to climb the ladder is that they feel defeated to leave after saying, I've had 4 promotions, I've been there 5 years, I've put my heart and soul in it, and only now I'm realising that if I do pop my clogs tomorrow, my job's actually going to be replaced in 72 hours.
Precisely.
And it's such a shame, whereas if they had something of their own, it just gives them something to shift to very quickly. We were talking about titles, just as we sort of come to an end. Titles, we were talking about, everyone loves a good title. I always try to say to people, never get caught up in it. And if you need to take another job, I don't know about you, but going from 35,000 or 40,000 and going and getting a Sainsbury's job where you're just going to be happy, you can start afresh. There's nothing wrong in that. Dropping titles. For anyone watching who's really holding on to some of their titles that they previously had, should they let go? Should we just sort of learn to, it's okay to take something maybe a little bit less paid and stuff like that?
Yeah, and the biggest reason for that is when you're in those kind of environments, those toxic environments, you are mentally and emotionally affected. You're traumatized, right? That's the reality. So pulling yourself out of that, and like you said, getting a job in Sainsbury's, doing whatever, just to let your mind breathe, let your emotions breathe, let yourself actually think, because when you're suffering with trauma, you can't think clearly. You suffer with something called brain fog. So your mind is consumed with the same wheel. So take yourself out of that situation, let everything just breathe, however that looks for you, and then reevaluate. And you'll make better decisions.
Yeah, it's like clarity, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like going to the health suite and sitting in the sauna. That's my advice. Go to the health suite, sit in the sauna, take time out. I always find a sauna works really well, where the heat and kind of you just sort of, it's like breathing space. And then straight in the steam room. But Rebecca, I have to say, I've absolutely loved this podcast.
Oh, thank you.
I already know there's so much to talk about. I know we could keep going. There's loads of other stuff I already want to talk to you about. So I'd love to do a part 2 at some point.
Yeah.
And where can people just reach out, get in touch, find out about your services? Where's the best place for them to go?
Probably TikTok, the Instagram as well. So there's always links to my websites, how to get hold of me, my podcast that I've been on. Everything's on there, either TikTok or Instagram.
Amazing. Well, I've absolutely loved it. So thanks so much for coming
on. Thanks for having me.
A pleasure. And everyone who's watched, thanks so much. And we'll see you all very soon.